On today's show, the NBA and NBA Players Association have come to tentative terms on a new collective bargaining agreement. How will this impact the broad NBA landscape? What are the Rockets' considerations about how some of these changes will take effect as early as next season? We're going to break it down for you coming up right here at Locked On Rockets.
This is Mission Control, Houston.
Ignition sequence start.
The Houston Rockets select Jalen Green, Alperen, Sengun, and Jabari Smith Jr.
T-minus 15 seconds. Guidance is internal.
Every time I step on that floor, I'm coming.
Hey, Houston fans, I am so happy.
You're getting somebody who's going to come in with a chip on their shoulder, somebody who's going to come in and compete from day one.
6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
What's up, and welcome to another edition of Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast home for everything Houston Rockets basketball. As always, I'm your host, Jackson Gatlin, native Houstonian and credentialed media member. I'm also the host of Locked On NBA Mondays. Be sure to follow along on Twitter at JT Gatlin, and the show, of course, at Locked On Rockets, free and available wherever you listen to your podcasts, including YouTube. Just go to YouTube, search Locked On Rockets. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Tell me your favorite part, your favorite change of the new CBA going to effect for the NBA starting next season. Let me know in the YouTube comments. Now, today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Last-minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. And as always, thank you so much for making Locked On Rockets part of your day every single day, whether it's on the way to work, on your lunch break, in the gym. Thank you for making LOR part of your day every single day. Joining us now is your weekly co-host, none other than the podfather himself, Rockets Wire editor and host of the Logger Line podcast, Ben DuBose. You can follow on Twitter at Ben DuBose. And Ben, we've got a lot to talk about today as the NBA has unveiled their new collective bargaining agreement. The NBA and NBPA striking the tentative deal, at least right now, and a lot of reporting coming out as far as just some of the terms and agreements and things that are going to basically major changes, sweeping across the NBA landscape with this new CBA in place. And my first immediate takeaway is just, man, it's really nice that we're not gonna have to deal with a lockout, at least in the foreseeable future, as this deal is tentative in nature, but should carry us through the end of the decade at this point.
Yeah, kudos to Adam Silver for, again, getting it done on the labor front. I think coming off the Major League Baseball lockout a year ago, that's obviously a sport that I follow closely as well. And I think that's a good comparison for the NBA because MLB and NBA face a lot of the same challenges with regards to the sheer volume of games and the ways that the pie needs to be split. And the fact that really Adam Silver, this is his second round of intense labor negotiations, and in both cases was able to get a deal done without getting even close to the threat of losing a season or parts of a season or delaying free agency, anything that could have just total chaos on the market. Score one for, I guess, relationships is the way that I would frame it. I think with baseball, one thing that Rob Manfred has taken a lot of heat for their commissioner is that it's pretty clear that he's a shill for the owners. And some will say, well, isn't Adam Silver the same? Technically, yes, but there is a way that you can be, I suppose, the figurehead, the guy representing the 30 owners, while still allowing the players and their union a constant voice throughout the process. Because when you do that, you have them much more willing, in my opinion, to be conciliatory, to believe when it's time to really seriously negotiate that the other side is negotiating in good faith. And when that happens, you're much more likely to get compromises where you need them, as opposed to the baseball model where you just try and strong arm everything. Sure, you might win sometimes because at the end of the day, you do hold the ultimate trump card and that the players don't want to go a season without being paid, but it can get really, really ugly. And there can be some consequences with regards to the product, free agency, a lot of chaos, and just a lot of things that are bad for the fan experience, as opposed to the NBA. I think what you're seeing, I'm not going to say that Adam Silver cares about the owners he represents any less, but I do think his willingness to constantly give the players a voice, it speaks well to, I suppose, an old school form of leadership where you try and build a consensus. It feels like that gets lost in a lot of capacities these days in the 2020s. But Adam Silver has done a really good job, in my opinion, of making everyone feel heard. And because of that, I think you have the stakeholders all willing to get to the table and give a little bit where they have to make sure that there's no stoppage. And at the end of the day, that's a win for fans.
Yeah, I mean, I think that by and large, while I'm not nearly as in tune with MLB or NFL as you are, I think by and large, at least the perception that I have as far as the three major commissioners across the three major sports leagues here in America are that Adam Silver actually does a pretty darn good job and is probably the best of the three at what he does as far as his role, his relationship with the players, with the owners, like that kind of thing. He balances the role incredibly well. So as much as we like to, joke around and say, oh, Adam Silver's NBA and this, that, and the other thing, I think he does a pretty solid job, all things considered. There's a lot of major kind of categories, areas of, news updates and things that are going to be changing starting next season, the 2023-2024 season. We have it kind of broken up into different segments here. There's the in-season tournament. There is a new second tax apron to consider for teams that are paying the luxury tax. There's changes to All-NBA and postseason award voting. There's major salary cap changes. There's contract-related changes. And then there's even some draft changes and some miscellaneous stuff in there. Ben, I'm going to let you drive the bus a little bit. What do you want to talk about first from what the CBA is going to be changing starting next year?
To me, the biggest takeaway has to do with the penalties for the various tax thresholds, and specifically for teams that are at that apron level. They're much more prohibitive towards a franchise like Golden State or Brooklyn doing what they've done in recent seasons. And I think that's good for the NBA as a whole. I think really quick, just the second tax apron, just so that people know where it is.
It's going to be a new, because there already is a tax apron in place for luxury tax teams.
Right.
This is a new one that will be $17.5 million above the tax line. Teams above this tax apron get a new set of restrictions, and they are as follows. They won't have access to the taxpayer mid-level exception. They won't be able to trade away first-round picks that are 7 years down the road. They won't be allowed to sign free agents on the buyout market. They won't be permitted to send out cash in trades, and they won't be able to take back more salary in a trade than they send out. That is a lot to deal with if you are at or above that threshold as a luxury tax-paying team.
Yeah, absolutely. It's much more prohibitive when it comes to the consequences, not just financially, but to team building as well, because there's a small handful of owners that they don't really care about the personal consequences in terms of the finances. If it helps their team win, for the most part, they're willing to do that. And some of the reaction on Twitter has been, oh, this is unfair. Why are you giving a stimulus to the owners who aren't doing their part and punishing those who do? And the reality is, for fans, this is better. It's about the fan experience. That's what ultimately is going to drive the success or failure of the NBA. And I think Adam Silver gets it. Ultimately, you need more fans across the league engaged to care about a sport that has so much inventory, 82 regular season games, plus 4 rounds of 7-game series in the playoffs. That's a lot of inventory to sell, and you need more people engaged. As a secondary point to that, I don't believe it's a coincidence that many of the owners who continually go the extra mile, when we talk about these owners that just, I guess, throw caution to the wind when it comes to their team building. We're talking about the Warriors, the Nets in recent years. Look at the markets they play in. It's not a coincidence that owners of teams like Charlotte are not going the extra mile, because they don't have the revenue streams that you have if you happen to buy a team that's near Silicon Valley or in the New York City market, and so on and so forth. This is a measure to bring more parity to all markets across the league. And I do think it could be somewhat beneficial for Houston. Houston's a good market, but it's not top 5 in terms of most of the revenue streams. And so a lot of what people nationally perceive as good ownership, a lot of time it dovetails with just the fact that they happen to be in an ideal market to where they can offset some of these financial costs by additional revenue streams and partnerships that they have that other owners who aren't going the extra mile. I think a good example in recent years is Phoenix. They've gotten piled on a lot, and I'm not going to defend Robert Sarver from a personal perspective. Clearly, there's things that went on in their organization that were deplorable. But in terms of the finances of it all, Phoenix does not have the revenue stream that some of these big market teams have. And so it becomes easy to just sort of say, well, this is a good owner, here's a bad owner because he's not willing to spend. Why are we, making it easier for the bad owners? Again, number one, I don't think it's as simple as that. I think some of the good propped up in ways that not everyone fully appreciates because they're just looking at the wins and losses. And as a secondary point, it's not just about, well, we should reward or punish X owners. No, what we're trying to do is make the most fun, competitive league there is for the benefit of a mass audience. Ultimately, that's what's going to drive more revenue and basically make the league healthy for the next generation. That's what you're trying to do. And so for me, these increased parity measures, look, it's reminiscent of the NFL. I mentioned MLB, you brought in NFL. One of the big reasons that the NFL is so popular is that everyone, even the small markets like Cincinnati and Buffalo, feel like they have a chance because of the parity that's sort of inherent in the sport. Not saying that the NBA is ever going to get to that level. Clearly, there's markets like Golden State and Miami that have certain advantages that you can't totally offset no matter what you do. But if you can just take a few steps in that direction, then that's just going to be a much more healthy league for certainly the fans, but also the economics of this whole operation. And that's going to benefit everyone in the years to come.
Yeah, I do think there's, when you look at just this specific feature of the CBA, the parity element is going to be huge. The NBA has dealt with a parity issue for a very, very long time. And I think that especially this, right, the penalties, once you start getting to a certain point, now the previous owners would just throw all the money at these problems and just say, oh, just sign the guys, we'll deal with the money later, whatever. You actually really have to be careful and kind of consider, do you want to be a top-heavy team that is, not able to add guys at the margins and add more depth as the season goes on, things like that? Or do you want to be a more well-rounded, deeper team? And which one of those pathways makes you a more viable contender at the end of the day? So I do think this adds a lot to the idea of deciding how you're going to build your team rather than just you have more money than anybody else and you can throw money at the problems and you're just going to be the best team because you have the most, the biggest payroll budget out of every team in the association.
And as a quick follow-up to that, you mentioned some of the penalties. I think one of the more underrated penalties is not being able to sign players on the buyout market. Yeah. Because for the teams that go above and beyond with their spending, one of the ways that they're willing to do that and make their rosters so top heavy is they know they have this card they can play at the deadline. When they need more depth, then they can just wait for players who aren't traded at the deadline and then fortify any holes by going to the buyout market. Not being able to do that is going to make for much more difficult decisions the previous summer because you can't, you don't have that ace in the hole card when it comes to filling out your depth. So you can't just be top heavy. You're going to have to think about the entire depth of your operation as well.
Coming up, we've got a whole in-season tournament to discuss, as well as the changes to All-NBA and postseason award voting, some of the other minutia as far as salary cap implications and changes that have been rolled out with this CBA, as well as the other miscellaneous stuff included in this deal. We're going to get there, but first, today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Look, buying tickets to your favorite events shouldn't be stressful, right? You're trying to go out and have a good time. You're trying to have fun. You shouldn't be stressed about buying tickets. I'll tell you what, I don't know how many times it's happened where I've had some friends hit me up and they're like, hey, we're going to this thing last minute. And it's like, do you want to come? And it's like, well, maybe if you told me a week ago or a month ago so I could have, bought a ticket and planned accordingly. Game Time eliminates all of that. It's the fast and easy way to buy tickets for all the sports, music, comedy, and theater events that are happening near you. They got flash deals on last-minute tickets, easy to find and buy tickets for every kind of event in your area. They've even got images of the seat view so you know exactly what you're getting before you buy it. Game Time is the place for last-minute ticket deals. Forget planning months in advance. Game Time has deals on tickets right up to the day of the event. So snag the tickets without the stress with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. And continuing on here at Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast home for everything Houston Rockets basketball. Now, Ben, we had heard about this. It feels like it's been in the works ever since the bubble season with the play-in tournament and the speculation of will the NBA eventually add an in-season tournament to try and generate some added buzz, some more excitement, and they have finally done it. There will be an in-season tournament starting next season with the 2023 calendar year. Quick notes on this. The first round of the tournament will be part of the regular season schedule with the top 8 teams advancing to a single elimination event in December. The final 4 will be played at a neutral location. Currently, Las Vegas is reportedly receiving a lot of attention as that possible neutral site, which makes a lot of sense. The NBA likes to do a lot of events with Las Vegas. It's a blossoming area for, sports competition, all that. NBA teams are expected to initially have 80 regular season games on their schedule. The leftover games for the teams that don't make the single elimination portion of the in-season tournament would be scheduled at a later date, while the two teams that make the final of the tournament would end up playing 83 games. That 83rd game wouldn't count towards, any sort of accolades or regular season records. It would basically live in limbo, similar to the play-in tournament games that currently live in limbo as far as NBA statistics and whatever is considered. And then the prize money for this in-season tournament, each player would stand to make $500,000 if you win the tournament, which is not much for, say, a superstar like, LeBron James or Giannis Antetokounmpo, but for a fringe NBA player who's trying to make a name for themselves, that could be more than they would make in an entire year of playing NBA basketball.
Yeah, and
I like it. I like that they're experimenting and trying new stuff personally, Ben. I think this is a great addition, and maybe it's a dumpster fire, maybe it's a train wreck, and it's awful, and it doesn't actually generate any more additional excitement or fun throughout the regular season for what is a grueling 82-game season where a lot of times we're just kind of tapping our feet saying, hey, can we just get to the postseason? But maybe it is a lot of fun, though.
Well, anybody who follows me on Twitter, at Ben DuBose, knows that one of my pet peeves when it comes to NBA discourse online is this rings culture. This idea that if your team doesn't win a ring, or a player, because there's also stan culture these days, doesn't win a ring, then the entire season was worthless. Even if you win 60 games, if you don't win the title, then you're the same as this season's Rockets, which is absolutely ridiculous. There's something to be said for simply having fun, a competitive team going out and winning games. And even if I don't think people are going to rush to Academy to buy whatever the tournament is called, championship shirts. I don't think it's going to be that. At the same time, look, it's something that isn't just one of 82 games. It's something different. You have to be willing to try new things, because in a landscape like the NBA with so much inventory to fill, and we know they're not going to give back playoff games in terms of, each of the 4 rounds being best of 7 now. Look, it's a bit of a slog to get through the 82 regular season games, and we sort of know that. I think this year's a perfect example. It doesn't matter what the Suns or the Lakers, their records are going into the playoffs. They're going to be pretty mid, yet we know they're going to be really, really tough outs in the playoffs. The Warriors too, because that's when they actually care, and it's almost like a total reset of the season. As long as they get into the field, then ultimately it's the regular season, other than for home court advantage, and that's only 1 game out of 7, really, unless the series goes 7 games. It's basically the same over the first 4 and the first 6. Then the regular season doesn't even matter. So how do you fill that inventory? That's a big challenge long term. And so doing something outside the box to potentially give fans a reason to care, to me, that goes a long way towards economically just giving this league a chance. Because long term, it's not just people. I say this all the time on Twitter. If you just try and make everyone demoralized, if you just go out and act like, well, any team that didn't win the title, any player that didn't win MVP accomplished nothing, people will check out. It's not just, demand for the NBA product is not a given. They can just watch Netflix or Hulu or whatever it may be and do something else with their time until the games get super meaningful. No, you need to give people a reason to care, a reason to actually feel like that investing 2.5 hours 3 times a week, give or take, is a worthwhile thing to do for 7 to 8 months of the year. And so I can't tell you for sure that the tournament is going to work, but it's worth trying. You need to be open to trying more things, especially in a landscape where the economics are only going to get more challenging as we go into this post, I suppose, cable bundle environment. We've talked a lot in the last few weeks about the regional sports network model collapsing and the implications for the Rockets and Astros here in Houston. I think that's also why you're seeing the NBA get more involved with Vegas. You mentioned hosting the in-season tournament there. There's also news that I believe players can promote and invest in gambling companies now. And of course, that was not received well on Twitter. A lot of people thinking of these Pete Rose scenarios. And yes, you're going to have to regulate it, certainly. But the reason they're doing this, and I think they have to do this, there's going to be a big hit to the entire NBA's business model. And the same goes for Major League Baseball, hockey, any sports that isn't just fully national the way the NFL is. This regional sports network collapsing across the board, it may not be the same year across the league. For example, the Rockets may end up taking over AT&T Sportsnet in conjunction with the Astros because they have these distribution contracts with Comcast, AT&T, DirecTV that run through 2032. So that may give them something of a 10-year Band-Aid. But the bottom line is relatively soon, they're going to be facing the same problem that many other markets. I think Bally represents more or less half the league, and they're going into bankruptcy right now. And whatever comes from, I guess, the streaming era, the economics are going to be far more challenging. The bottom line is that for years, for decades, the league has been propped up by fans who do not watch these games funding the channels, because AT&T Sportsnet is on the tier, the second tier at DirecTV, for example, and there's a lot of people who don't even watch the games, but they're still funding it because it just happens to be on the tier of other channels that they want. Well, when it goes to streaming and it's only the people who actually want the games, it's going to be pretty challenging. For example, the Yankees last week just rolled out their model. It's like, to subscribe to their games, it's $25 a month and well over $200 for the full season. That's a lot different than, the $5 that people are thinking that, you just add on like Peacock or Apple TV, something like that. No, it's going to be really, really challenging to get, but you have to price it that high to offset not having these people funding it the way they have been for decades. And so where does the NBA, where do these teams go to make up the shortfall? It's to Vegas, because gambling is the huge sector, the growth potential there is in this whole equation. And we're seeing not just the league, but teams as well. Tillman Fertitta and the Rockets, they got their deal with DraftKings a couple of years ago, to where if and when Texas ever legalizes gambling, there's actually going to be a sports book at the Toyota Center. That's part of the agreement that I think was late 2021, the Rockets announced. And so they're positioning themselves as well. This is the league at a league level doing the same thing. And so the in-season tournament in Vegas, and then potentially allowing players and teams to invest in gambling companies. Yes, there needs to be regulations. I understand, you don't have to point out Pete Rose. Everybody knows that. But I see why the league is trying to do it, because, again, it's a very real economic challenge, this whole regional sports network. We could do a separate show on that. But to tie it into the CBA, this is why you're seeing more of a Vegas connection, more of a gambling connection, is that this is the growth potential of the pie. This is how they can offset a lot of those expected losses on the TV side and keep this thing humming economically into the next generation.
It's going to be really awful when it's going to be like that Black Mirror episode where it's going to be like, please place a $5 parlay to be able to, renew your subscription to your local, RSN, whatever. It's going to be awful. Also, yeah. Ben, which banner are the Rockets hanging first? The in-season tournament champions banner or a actual NBA champion banner?
I'll go with actual championship, only because I feel like that the in-season tournament is going to be taken a little more seriously by the smaller markets. I think by the time this comes into play, and maybe it's, so I don't know, next year, never say never, but I think the teams that are more veteran laden are not going to be as willing to pull out all the stops. Those that have bigger goals, I think it's going to be something that some of the smaller markets, at least in the short term, feel that, they can use to sort of springboard themselves. So I don't know, maybe the next couple of years, the Rockets make a push, but generally speaking, a market like Houston, I think they're going to be much more focused on the big picture and not necessarily trying to maximize all the little things during the season. As far as the banner, though, I will throw out, I am still waiting on the Rockets to actually update their division champions banner at Toyota Center with the 2020 bubble Rockets. Somehow,
I love that you're still beating this drum. You brought it up so many times. I love that this is the hill you are willing to die on.
The disrespect for the bubble Rockets, the small ball Robert Covington at the 5. Those guys went in the Grand Floridian champs, the last team left at their bubble hotel. And they can't even get a line on the banner at Toyota Center. It's like they never existed. Respect Rockets legend Russell Westbrook.
Oh, come wow. On. What a way to close out this segment. Coming up, we're going to get into the award voting changes and some of the other minutia of the new salary cap changes, the other miscellaneous things, the draft changes, which are pretty important concerning the Houston Rockets. Well, maybe not so much, seeing as they don't own their own draft capital. Shout out to the trade for Rockets legend Russell Westbrook. But we're going to get there in just one moment. But first, today's episode is sponsored by BetterHelp. Look, getting to know yourself can be a lifelong process, especially because we're always constantly growing and changing as individuals. It'd be great if life came with like a user manual that told you exactly what to do and when to do it and how to be the best version of yourself, but it doesn't, right? Therapy can kind of help with that, though. Therapy is all about deepening your self-awareness and understanding, because sometimes we don't know what we want or why we react the way we do to certain situations or things until we talk through it with another person. That's what therapy is all about. If you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Just fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist and switch therapists at any time for no additional charge. Discover your potential with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/LockedOnNBA today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOnNBA. And final segment here at Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast home for everything Houston Rockets basketball. Let's hit on these draft changes really quick, Ben, just because it's not a ton to unpack here, although there are a couple notable changes here. So first off, any player who participates in the NBA Draft Combine is now required to undergo physical exams. That's a big one, right? Like, I mean, just from this past draft cycle, right? Chet Holmgren, the whole not wanting to submit physicals to teams was a big sticking talking point throughout this the draft cycle, this last go around. This is something that, would have been probably beneficial to the Rockets these past few years when they were bottoming out and, they were very heavily involved in the draft cycle. These couple changes might not impact the team as much moving forward as we hope to see the team start to ascend in the NBA standings. And then the other big one, this was one of those major talking points about the new CBA that we thought was going to be removed. The one and done rule stays in place. So no changes there. Players will still have to spend 1 year either at the G League level or, 1 year in college before they can make it to the NBA. That was a big one that we thought was going to be done away with, and it looks like it's sticking around at least for the foreseeable future.
That might actually be the biggest benefit to the Rockets specifically from these negotiations, because, of course, the Rockets the next 3 years are not set up that well from a draft perspective, at least themselves. Now, they do own the Brooklyn picks. We'll have to see what happens with the Nets. But with those future obligations owed to Oklahoma City, it would be especially tough if the Rockets missed a hypothetical double draft, which had been talked about forever. The double draft being the year in which the rule changes and you have both the normal class, the way it's been set up for years with the one and done, the guys that are 1 year removed from high school, combined with the next year's high school class. And so if the Rockets missed out on that, then it would have been a big hit, as opposed to with it being the status quo. It's not any better, I guess, because it's the way that it has been, but at least it's not worse. And so when you look at a team like the Rockets, that's generally mortgaged its picks. Now, they do have the years coming in from Brooklyn, but we have to see what happens with the Nets. What is their direction this offseason? There's a lot of questions that go into play there. I also think that odds are pretty high the Rockets look to move those draft picks anyway. Those from the Nets, there's plenty of rumors about them in recent weeks. If you're following the Rockets on social media, you've seen talk about Jalen Brown. Of course, we talked about James Harden throughout the year. There's a good shot that as part of the same incentive, because their own picks are owed to Oklahoma City, they make some moves this offseason to try and bring in more veteran type players. And so you may, even if you do have those Brooklyn picks, you may end up trading a few of those to sort of facilitate this turnaround of your roster. And so you get to the same spot. A double draft, it would have really been painful to miss out on that because of the Russell Westbrook trade. Now that's not going to be the case. I think, most of the stuff we talk about with regards to the increased parity, which I think is at play here as well. I think another factor to consider with them changing the draft rules is they want to make it where it's even more challenging for top prospects to try and steer themselves to a particular destination, because one way they've done it at times in the past is, if you don't want to cooperate with the team, you don't
give them your physical
medicals.
Yeah.
And it makes that team more skittish about drafting that player. And so it gives the players a little more control. Whereas this, it's in the same vein as many of the other changes. It's more parity. It's giving the less desirable teams a chance. But at the end of the day, I think the Rockets aren't at the front of the list when it comes to teams being punished. I think that would be, as we mentioned earlier, teams like the Warriors and the Nets, teams that have gone beyond their means to spend and get all these big ticket players, then replenish their depth in the buyout market, as we mentioned, and so on and so forth. But it's not like the Rockets are, at the tier receiving the stimulus. This is not the Charlotte Hornets. This is a good market. I would guess somewhere between, I don't know, maybe 6 and 12, top 20% to top 40% in the league. I think, there's still some questions with Tillman Fertitta and how willing he is to spend. But I don't think he's one of the worst spenders in the league either. I think worst case, the Rockets are middle of the pack. And I think they're a little bit better than that when you consider the market And I do think that there's some circumstances, we can go into the 2019 spending stuff another time, but I think some of the complaints on that with regards to the Rockets ducking the luxury tax are a little overdone when you look at the specific options that they had on the table. The bottom line is combining Tillman Fertitta and Houston, the city, its market size, its revenue streams. To me, the Rockets are upper middle class. So at the end of the day, they might be hurt a little bit, but they're not on either extreme when it comes to these overall changes, either helping or hurting them. They're somewhere in the middle of the pack, probably a little bit above middle of the pack when it comes to, I guess, the tiers of the league and some of the impacts. And so in terms of parity, the Rockets are already one of those teams that are sort of in, again, I would say not really the middle. I would look at them somewhere top 20% to top 40% when it comes to organizations. But overall, it sort of comes out a wash or close to it. I think this is one area, avoiding the double draft, that really could help them, because that had the potential in these next 2 or 3 years, whenever that was to happen, to really harm teams that were, I suppose, just cashed out of draft picks, and by extension, really benefit teams. Think Oklahoma City, one of your rebuilding rivals, that is loaded with draft picks. Now that's not going to happen. And so that is, in my opinion, a win for the Rockets.
Now, one of these other ones that I think is going to be a huge win as far as some of the contract-related changes here, there's this big one, and I think the Rockets, this might be one of the sneakiest benefits of this new CBA for the Houston Rockets is there will no longer be restrictions on how many players you can have on designated rookie extensions, so the Rose Rule, or designated veteran contracts. And this is great for the Rockets because they've got so many young guys who are all going to be blossoming and growing and kind of coming into their primes together at, supposedly the same time, right? Imagine, Jalen Green hits and Jabari hits and Sengun hits. There's always that question of, okay, well, how do you pay all these guys? And for the longest time now, you've been able to have the one designated rookie extension and the one designated, veteran extension. And now there's no limit to that. So now the Rockets can be competitive. And let's say all these young talented players that they have all hit, and you want to have the utmost advantage of retaining their services and giving them a better contract offer than any other team can put forth. You can do that now. And yes, it does feed into what we discussed there in that first segment, some of the penalties that are levied and associated with the teams in the upper echelon of luxury tax spending, and that is something you have to still consider when you're looking at things from a team building perspective. But at least at this point, the Rockets won't be hamstrung between deciding, okay, are we designating Jalen Green as our rookie scale extension contract, or do we want to hold off on that and give it to Jabari? Do we have to decide which one of these guys is better or the worst player? That it's not something that they're going to be dealing with whatsoever.
Yeah, it does help a team that theoretically has a number of young building blocks that may be up for huge deals a few years from now. The Rockets are definitely one of those that could be impacted. I also think something else that really helps the Rockets from this CBA is the fact that, unlike in 2016, there's going to be smoothing with regards to the increases in the salary cap. I believe capped at 10% per year. And the reason I think that's a big deal for the Rockets is the fact that they have, give or take, $60 million in salary cap space this offseason. And what you want is certainty. When you're thinking about giving out these big contracts that the Rockets will give out, be it James Harden or whoever else it may be this summer, and then you talk about the raises to guys like Jalen Green, Jabari Smith Jr., Alperen Sengun, if he's still here, and so on and so forth, the uncertainty with regards to exactly when and how much the spike is going to lead to, that can be one of those things that it just makes short-term spending more complicated, because you don't exactly know. You're waiting for the exact terms of the next TV deal, just how much revenue is going to be brought in by that. And so it just makes planning out your future a bit more challenging. And so, not going to say that there's no uncertainty at the moment because you don't have the next TV deal fully in. There's still some stuff you're waiting on with regards to the revenue side, but because you have a cap in terms of how much the salary cap can grow in a given year, you can get much more precise with regards to planning out, okay, this is what it looks like, the salary cap that is 2 years from now, 3 years from now, so on and so forth. And it makes it a lot more easier to invest if you're a team that needs to do that in the short term, which the Rockets clearly are. Without that, not saying that they would be reluctant and do nothing, But I just think that it makes it a little bit easier to stomach if you're handing out these mega deals the way the Rockets are going to do the next couple of years, both externally with regards to the free agent market or trades, and also internally as guys like Jalen Green become extension eligible. It makes it a lot easier to sort of have a, feel comfortable about the deals you're giving out, because you can say, okay, here is what percentage of the salary cap it's going to be in future years. This is the impact that it's going to have. And while you can't be 100% precise, obviously, each year's cap is subject to change a little bit based on the precise revenue figures that come in at the end of a league year. You can get a lot closer now that there's not going to be some massive spike. And so I think that's a benefit to the Rockets, given the fact that we know they're going to have to spend a lot of money in the next couple of years.
Some of the other miscellaneous bumps and changes percentage-wise, the value of the mid-level exception is going up 7.5%. The room exception is going up 30%. There's some other changes down here. Teams are going to be allowed to carry 3 players on two-way contracts now instead of just 2 players. A player signing a veteran contract extension will be allowed to receive 140% of his previous salary in the first year of a new extension instead of 120%. So an added ability to try and retain some of your free agents. This will be really good for role players to be able to retain some of the services of guys like that. Somewhere, this doesn't really impact like star quality players, but role players who, might be more willing to test the waters in free agency if they're, the team that they're currently on can give them a better bump in those non-bird years before the bird rights kick in. Elsewhere, I'm trying to double check, make sure I want to tackle a few of these other random notes.
I will say very quickly, I think there's going to be more of an emphasis on youth as a result of this CBA, with expanding the 2 ways from 2 to 3 and making it easier to sign your second round picks without having to dip into your MLE. They'll create an exception that you can give them 3 or 4 year deals. I think ultimately where that's going to lead to, it's going to be a bit harder for, I would say, the NBA's middle class once guys get to, I suppose, their early 30s, to where the starting salaries are a lot higher. I think ultimately one of the things that's going to happen is that with teams having an increased ability to sign young players, it's going to be much more tempting to sort of use those to fill out your roster as opposed to older guys, simply because they're cheaper, there's more upside, and now there's more ways to sort of have them in your system, to where it's not like you're just going to lose them after a year and you can't develop them for the future. Now that you can, it's going to be much easier to sort of fill out your roster with young guys. And I do think that that's going to put more of a premium on your talent development, your scouting. And we know the Rockets the last couple of years have really expanded their basketball operations staff. We joke that Rafael Stone hired all of draft Twitter, it feels like, to the staff the last couple of summers. And so that's something, they've still got to hit. They've got to prove that, that they can identify and sign the right guys. But on paper, it could benefit Houston, because I just think that, it won't be all at once. It'll be subtle, but by increasing the 2-way and giving teams more of an opportunity to, I suppose, and keep your second round picks and have them in your system long term without having to, eat into your mid-level exception or some other exception. I think in the grand scheme of team building, it's going to make the league skew a bit younger. And so it's going to come down to, can you identify the right second round picks and undrafted guys to fill those slots? And so hopefully the Rockets and the investments they've made the last couple of years into their scouting sides of the organization, hopefully that's something that pays off with this new CBA.
Shout out to the right second round picks and undrafted guys, KJ Martin and Jae'Sean Tate. Yep. A couple finds by this Houston Rockets front office. Another thing that will actually benefit the Rockets, the players permitted to sign rookie scale extensions up to 5 years instead of 4, even if the extension is worth less than the maximum salary. That's something that could benefit the Rockets a little bit further down the line. Restricted free agents, the time that they have to sign an offer sheet, match an offer sheet for a restricted free agent, reduced from 48 hours to 24 hours. So less, I guess, finagling during free agency, where you might be able to, hamstring a team and their cap sheet by throwing out, random bag offers for random role players or whatever, trying to mess with another team, just reduced little, threshold there.
The most hilarious anecdote in recent Rockets history, by the way, was in 2012 when the Rockets were signing Jeremy Lin, who was a restricted free agent, and the Knicks literally dodged the offer sheet. Whoever was supposed to receive it, the Rockets general counsel was trying to get it to them, and the Knicks literally hid to delay the clock starting. And they knew they weren't going to match. It was just too prohibitive, the deal for Lin that the Rockets handed out. But they were so pissed off by it that they just wanted to make the Rockets wait a little bit longer because of the window. Back then, I think the window was 3 or 4 days. It was a lot longer than the 48 hours it is now. And as you mentioned, it's getting changed to just 24. So that gives restricted free agents a bit more leverage. Maybe that helps the Rockets because they have all this cap room to spend the next couple of years. Who knows? But I do think that it reminds me of how far we've come since the Jeremy Lin days when the Knicks, everybody's in Vegas for Summer League, and they literally hid so that they could not receive the offer sheet. And by not receiving the offer sheet, that clock had not started yet.
That is so funny. Such a crazy anecdote. The NBA is such a wild landscape.
Yeah.
Let's knock out very quickly here. I tease it up all episode. The All-NBA and postseason award voting, basically major change here. You have to appear in a minimum of 65 games to be eligible to earn postseason awards like MVP, Rookie of the Year, All-NBA. There may be even some further conditions attached to the minimum games required, although those are not disclosed yet. And then the 3 All-NBA teams are now going to be positionless. So now, instead of it being 2 guards, 2 forwards, and a center on each team, it's basically going to be the 15 best players in the association. I personally love this change, Ben. I think it's been a long time coming. The NBA is now in an era of positionless basketball, and you can look just to this season at how well Nikola Jokic and Joel Embiid are playing, and the fact that one of those two guys, 2 of the best players in the association this year, one of them is going to be left off the All-NBA first team feels awful.
Yeah, even if we get it down to backcourt and frontcourt, that's too tricky because there's guys like Jalen Brown. They really play both. They're versatile enough that they fit in both categories. So limiting to just one, there's just no realistic and fair way to do that in an increasingly positionless NBA. I agree with you. This is the way to go. And as far as the rest, look, it ties in perfectly with what we led off the show discussion, which is you have to give people a reason to care. And so that's where the 65 game threshold comes into play. Look, you want to incentivize players to be out there more in the regular season so that people have a reason to watch, that fans have a reason to stay invested.
And it's worth noting, 65 is about 3/4 of the season, right? And so you could still be
a little more than that.
Yeah, a little bit more. You could still sustain like a major injury or whatever if you're a player, and then still be in line to receive one of these awards. Now, if you're dealing with a couple, plethora of injuries, whatever, then yeah, you're probably out of luck for an MVP trophy that year. But this doesn't. It's not just like, okay, you've got to be healthy and you've got to never load manage, never miss any games. No, it's just NBA is trying to get their star players out there, right, and participating in more of these games.
Yeah, I agree. To me, it's the right move simply because, again, the more you can get fans a reason to tune in to the regular season, the better for the end product. That's why so much of the Twitter discourse is just so toxic with regards to the focus on championship or bust. Okay, well, if you're saying that 97% of teams, 29 out of 30, and their fans basically have nothing to celebrate, that's just a miserable season where nothing was accomplished, well, why should they keep watching? That seems like a terrible reason to be an NBA fan and to take up watching NBA games as a hobby. There's got to be, movies, TV shows you can stream that give you more entertainment than something that's 97% likely to end in heartbreak. There have to be other reasons to care. And I think that's what the NBA is trying to do, especially with the cable challenge with regards to the regional sports network and the fact that whenever that inevitably collapses, and it's not going to be the same year for everybody, but it is coming. There's going to be less revenue coming in. So how do they keep this thing going? And so you've got to get creative. The gambling partnerships, that's one way to do it. But also just giving the regular season as much of a bump as you can. The in-season tournament, maximizing incentives, i.e. awards for players to be out there a respectable amount. All of that potentially leads to regular season games having more meaning, which is what you need to sell 18,000, 19,000 tickets per night to get people tuning in at enough numbers to where you can get at least some advertising, regardless whether it's cable, streaming, whatever it is, to your game broadcast, to make your national advertisers feel comfortable in carrying your regular season product as well and giving a stimulus to everyone because, that's evenly distributed. All of that is what you need to keep this league healthy in a time in which, again, everybody knows there's this huge iceberg that they're about to hit with regards to the cable landscape. These are the ways that you can offset that. The NBA is trying to make the regular season matter. To me, that's what sort of ties all of these changes together. I don't know if it's fully going to accomplish that. Again, to some degree, this sport with 4 best-of-7 rounds in the playoffs is always going to be about, legacies are defined by the postseason. But it doesn't mean you don't try. It doesn't mean, you even if it just helps a little bit, then ultimately that little bit can mean a lot when it comes to the long-term economic health of the sport.
You mentioned it. We mentioned it a couple times in there. The players being able to invest in the sports gambling companies. They'll also be able to invest and promote cannabis companies and allowed to invest in active NBA and WNBA franchise. And this might be via a private equity firm selected by the NBPA. But this might be the biggest one here, Ben. Players will no longer be tested for marijuana use, which forces the retirement of this incredible clip from Stephen A. Smith.
Oh, do it again, please.
Stay off the weed. Stay off the weed. And you can't stay off the weed. He ain't getting busted for using weed.
Such an iconic rant moment monologue, just the recurring the weed from Stephen A.
Well, I'll just point out the Rockets need more shooting. Does that mean they should bring J.R. Smith in for a workout?
Oh, there we go. On that note, Ben, you know the drill. Let everybody know where they can track you down at.
Yep, Ben DuBose on Twitter, the Rockets Wire on Twitter, the Logger Line on Twitter, and rocketswire.usatoday.com for all of your daily Houston Rockets news coverage.
And when they bring in J.R. Smith, he's going to be passing around the locker room.
Boom. Another one.
That's going to do it for another edition of Locked on Rockets. As always, thank you so much for checking out the show. If you haven't done so yet, please consider subscribing wherever you listen to your podcast. That's Apple, Spotify, Google, the Odyssey app, free and available on all podcast platforms. We're also available on YouTube. Just go to YouTube, search Locked on Rockets. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. But as always, thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for listening. We look forward to having you back right here at Locked on Rockets, your daily podcast home for everything Houston Rockets basketball.